Renar's podcast.
And then, so you got the chicken.
So all my hens are rescue hens. So they've all worked on a farm. And basically what happens, I don't know if it's the same in the rest of the world, but in this country, generally they get to about 18 months old and they go through their first molt. So they drop all their feathers and they regrow them.
Oh, no.
But during that time, they don't lay eggs because, you know, they're using the vitamins and minerals and stuff to build themselves back up. So a lot of farmers are like, well, why would I keep a hen that isn't laying eggs? So they get rid of them. And usually they end up as cat food or dog food or whatever. But there's a charity called Fresh Start for Hens. Shout out to those guys. Doing the Lord's work. You know, they go around to all these farms where, you know, they're kept in not great conditions, and they collect them all up and they give them to people like me who sort of want some backyard hens. But for me, it was the poultry industry is not a great one the way it's currently run. Don't get me wrong, some farms are better than others. Great. But because roosters aren't productive, generally they're separated at birth, and what used to happen is they would just be chucked in a grinder. Like, they'd just be like, shred that one. Now I think they gas them, which is more humane, but still not a great option. So for me, I was like, right, well, I don't want to add to that cycle. So when I was first thinking about getting hens, I was like, right, I'll get some nice Polish hens, I'll get some silkies, you know, and they look great, and they
You get some silkies. So you're saying that like I would know what the hell is silkies.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, silkies are like, you know, those hens that look like they're from Fraggle Rock or something. Like they look like Muppets. They've got like big tufty heads and all the rest of it. Yeah, so they're a specific breed.
I'm gonna put a photo of silkies.
Please do. They look great. But yeah, so I was like gonna do that, and then I was like, well, no, because then all the male chicks, that's still happening, right? Like that happens if I feed into that industry. So I thought, right, well, then all I'll do is I will get rescue hens and I'll give them a nice retirement.
Oh.
Right, so they get to live in their run. They've got like a nice, it's made up of like Harris panels. I've built some like, some elevated bits so that they can sort of climb. They can roost in like this nice high bit in the eaves of the roof that I built for it. I've put like swinging tires in there so they can So I built that whole area, and then I fenced off this other bit, which is like a bigger run for them. So when I'm there, because if they were in there all the time, the foxes would get them. But when I'm there, they've got like a nice roaming area, and I leave the weeds to go so that they can eat them, and all the other weeds I chuck in. I chuck in the pen for them, so they scratch them up and they get all my scraps and stuff. So my hens, I think they had a pretty bad time at the farm where they were at, because they bully each other a lot. Like almost all of them have got like bald patches near their tails from where they're all just like standing on top of each other and pecking their feathers out. And I think that's just because of how the situation they were in before. But yeah, they will go for each other. Like the amount of times I have to sort of like bang the side of their cage and be like, "Oi, you don't fight with your sister." You know, it's like you sort of have to do that. But yeah, I mean, once that's established, they're a lot calmer, you know.
That's interesting. Like also when you mentioned about the farms, I was passing by this one chicken farm a while ago. This is like 8 years ago. Me and my mate, we went for New Year's, someone in UK up north. I'd already forgot where was it. But I remember as we were passing by this chicken farm, the stench.
Yeah.
It was insane. Someone who's like grew up in a farm, like we had our own chicken, and it was beautiful. Like we would have some chicken who would disappear, and then like a couple weeks later or whatever appears with all these chicks, and like it's just so cute and beautiful and all this like life circle, and they laying eggs, and like wow, great. And then you go past by, and I think I like did a little peek and whatever. It was so sad. So sad to see that shit.
The problem, like, I get why we have farms like we have now, because they're very productive. Right. And because we've got a booming population, we need food, right? Like I get all of that, but it does feel it feels unnatural, right? Like it feels like what you're talking about, like having a few hens in a barn and they like, you know, they scratch about and, you know, they run around, and it's like, that's natural, right? Like chickens aren't entirely natural because we've sort of bred them to be what they are.
Yeah.
But that feels a lot better than having 100 hens in cages.
Yeah.
And they're all like, and they don't muck them out for ages. So it just, like you say, it just stinks.
Well, but that would be with anything. With anything, you put humans together, like that 100 people or whatever, like it's always going to be this thing. And as you say, it's all about productivity to get the numbers as high as possibly we can.
And not only that, but to like reduce the cost, right? Because like people don't want to spend the money on it.
Yeah.
And I understand that, like it's a problem I have with environmentalism where it can be inherently classist. And it's like, oh no, we should all eat free-range eggs and they should all have their own masseuse and all of this. And it's like, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
Not everyone can afford, a $5 for 6 eggs.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I get that, but...
But there's an interesting one. This is an interesting one. Like I was listening this today, or was it yesterday, one of the podcasts, they were talking about how, it would be so much greater that if we would produce phones, right, and it would be produced in our countries, like UK, States, whatever, and people would get a proper salary, blah, 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 blah. So, but that meant straight away that the amount of money what the corporation makes goes down.
Yeah.
Right. So, in the end of the day, corporation, company, whatever, their main target is to make as much as possible money. It's all about the revenue. And here, like in animal production, in all these huge farms and stuff, is the same concept. And the only way to reduce this inhumane conditions would be, like in my head, that government, whatever official will come in and see like the conditions. They will, okay, so this is way too many chicken in this small space.
Yeah.
You allowed only to have this amount of like give like very specific rules. Like if you don't agree with these rules, that's it. We're going to shut you down.
Yeah.
Right. But then now question is like, so how these corporations convince the government officials, whatever, like, oh guys, we're gonna give you this much money. However, it works, but it's obviously it's fucked up somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there are those sorts of rules, right? Like it's not the Wild West. Like people can't just do exactly what they want. But I think it's clear that some of those rules. I mean, it's like anything political, isn't it? When money gets involved, money talks, morals walk.
Hey.
It's that thing. So I think, you get it, man. Like everyone's struggling, like almost everyone, universally. So if you can reduce your costs, you will. Unfortunately, that comes at the cost of humanity in some instances, like especially with farming.
Yeah, and one of the greatest things about chicken and eggs, and especially when they don't have roosters, that means like there's no killing going on. So those non-fertile eggs is just an egg with a protein, amazing protein, good stuff for your health and everything is right there. And you still have the movement of vegans. Hey, shout out to vegans. Who's like, no, how dare you killing those? It's like, where is the problem? Like these chicken live their lives, they're enjoying themselves, they're laying these eggs. This is amazing for our health. This is a good source of food and all that stuff.
Eggs is a weird one because it's you can't say they should live exactly how they lived because technically chickens never really existed in the wild because they're sort of like jungle fowl that we've selectively bred over the years to become what a current chicken is. I mean, even if you look at pictures of chickens from the 50s, they were much slimmer. They were more for eggs than they were for meat. So, they had much less developed sort of like breast muscles and stuff.
Yeah.
So, that's a weird one. And also, if it's an unfertilized egg, you're like, well, it would rot otherwise. Although, I mean, chickens will eat their own eggs. So like with me, I mean, because I don't have my chickens to produce eggs, right? I have them because they're pets. They do produce eggs, and that's great. But sometimes I'll crack one getting it out of the cage or whatever, so I'll just chuck it on the floor and let them have it.
They destroy it, yeah.
Yeah,
I know,
and they go for it.
Yeah,
man.
I remember that. Like, they go crazy.
Yeah. But also, like I was saying, like I give them all my weeds and like the outside leaves from my cabbages. I basically feed them all the stuff that I don't eat from the allotment, and they produce a load of shit, and that goes back on my allotment. So it's like they eat the bits I don't, and then they help produce more. So I've tried to make it a bit of a closed system.
Nice.
So like all the stuff that doesn't become compost, I feed to the chickens. The chickens produce shit that goes and becomes manure for the garden, which is great as well. Like it's really, really nutritious for the soil. So yeah, that all gets reused.
Yeah.
No, like the longest I've had a chicken live for is 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And I think a lot of the time that's because of like I say, the conditions I get them from. Sometimes, so actually the charity that I do go to, I spoke to one of the women there and they were like, well, sometimes they just don't survive the move. And it's so stressful for them. And obviously where we have selectively bred them, perhaps their hearts just aren't up for the stress of it anymore. So yeah, I've had a couple of times I've like done a rescue, like I've taken some in and 3 days later I find one dead and it's always sad.